everyone. I hope all of you are doing great. And welcome to this session. Here with me is Ananya.
Hello, everyone.
So, Ananya, what are we doing today?
So we'll continue with our RPSC practice, and this is RPSC Crash Course Day 9. We have done 8 more classes before. If you haven't seen them, you can see them on YouTube, and we can begin our practice for today.
Yeah. So, let's move on to our first question. Right.
Dust Specks on a Road is the autobiography of Dash. Is it by Richard Wright, Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, or Allen Ginsberg? Dust Specks on a Road. This is the autobiography.
Okay. So, Dust Tracks on a Road. It's a very important autobiographical work by Zora Neale Hurston. Remember the writer who wrote Those Eyes Were Watching God? So, Dust Tracks in a Road, it's the autobiography of Zora Neale Hurston. Okay. And this book begins with Zora Neale Hurston's childhood in the Black community of Eatonville, Florida. And then this autobiography covers her education at Howard University, where she began as a fiction writer, having 2 stories published under the guidance of Charles S. Johnson. This autobiography also covers her anthropological work under Franz Boas that led to her study Mules and Men. Okay, so Dust Tracks on a Road, it's a very important autobiographical work by Zora Neale Hurston. Okay, next question. Yeah.
The Gettysburg Address is a speech that Dash delivered during the American Civil War at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery, now known as Gettysburg National Cemetery. The options are Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, or Sojourner Truth.
Okay. Let me tell you that there are many important speeches which have been delivered across the decades on various important occasions. Okay, the Gettysburg Address is one of those important speeches which we all should know. So the Gettysburg Address, it's a speech that the US President Abraham Lincoln delivered during the American Civil War at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery, now known as Gettysburg National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on the afternoon of November 19, 1863. Okay, so this speech was delivered by Abraham Lincoln in 1863, 4.5 months after the Union armies defeated Confederate forces in the Battle of Gettysburg, the Civil War's deadliest battle. And this speech remains one of the best known speeches in American history. Okay, the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. It's a very important speech, which was delivered in 1863. Okay, next.
The Post Office is a 1912 play by Dash. Is it Badal Sarkar, Rabindranath Tagore, Bharti Sarabhai, or none of the above? The play's name is The Post Office. It's a 1912 play.
So the Post Office, in Bengali, it is called Dak Ghar. It's a 1912 play by Rabindranath Tagore, and it concerns Amol, a child confined to his adoptive uncle's home by an incurable disease. And very popular critiques note that the play continues to occupy a special place in Tagore's reputation, both within Bengal and in the wider world. And this play was written by Tagore within 4 days. Okay, so the Post Office is a very important play by Tagore. Okay, next.
Which work among the following got the Booker Prize for 1989? Is it Kafka on the Shore, The Remains of the Day, The Shadow Lines, or Laburnum for My Head? Which work got the Booker Prize for 1989?
So, I think all of these works here are very familiar to us. And it's very important to know which work got which prize during which year. It's a very important aspect of exams that such questions often come. Okay. So it is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, which got the Booker Prize for 1989. Okay. This work, The Remains of the Day, received the Booker Prize for fiction in 1989. The Remains of the Day. And here the protagonist is Stevens. He's a butler with a long record of service at Darlington Hall, a fictitious stately home near Oxford, England. And this novel talks about his experiences in life, how he spent so many years in service at Darlington Hall, how he fell in love also, but everything was in vain because he never had the courage to express his love to the woman he loved. And this novel talks about, the opportunities a man loses and the regret that a man experiences later on in life. Okay, it's a very important work by Kazuo Ishiguro, The Remains of the Day, and it got the Booker Prize in 1989. Also, do look up the works of Amitav Ghosh, the various Northeastern writers, okay, then various writers from Japan. They're very important. Okay. Next.
Choose the wrong statement about new historicism. The critical approach that developed in the 1980s, mainly through the work of Stephen Greenblatt, or heavily influenced by Foucault's analysis of power, or is it a reaction against reader response criticism, which focuses on the reader's participation in the process of meaning making, or literature seen as an expression of the power structures of the surrounding society? You have to tell the wrong statement about new historicism from these.
Okay. So here, all the options are true except the option C, or the third option. Okay. Here, the option is reaction, that a new historicism was a reaction against reader response criticism, which focuses on the reader's participation in the process of meaning making. This option C is wrong, because new historicism, it was a reaction against new criticism, structuralism, and deconstruction, because these movements believed in reading texts in isolation. These movements were not really bothered about the historical and socio-political conditions in which a text was produced and circulated, right? So this movement was a reaction against new criticism, structuralism, and deconstruction. It was not a reaction against reader response criticism. So option C is wrong, but the other three options are correct. But it is indeed a critical approach that developed in the 1980s through the works of Stephen Greenblatt, right? Especially his work called Renaissance Self-Fashioning, From Moore to Shakespeare. That was the work which inaugurated this movement of new historicism. Again, Foucault's analysis of power, knowledge, and historical conditions, these ideas, they indeed influence new historicism. And yes, new historicism sees literature as an expression of the power structures of the surrounding society. So all these options are correct, but option C is wrong. I hope that's clear. Okay. Okay, so before we proceed, we have already started this admission for December NET 2024, and the classes for this course will start from July 8. And the admission has already started. So if you haven't enrolled yet, please do. And you can see the numbers on the screen where you can contact further if you have any questions, and then you can get enrolled for this course. Okay. Next, yeah.
Which statement among the following is wrong about Orientalism by Edward Said? Orientalism is by Edward W. Said, establishes the term Orientalism as a critical concept to describe the West's commonly contemptuous depiction and portrayal of the East, that is, the Orient. The notion of cultural representations as a means for domination and control is a central feature of Said's critical approach proposed in his work Orientalism. said, opined that Western critics, the Western writings about the Orient, the perceptions of the East presented in Orientalism, can be taken at face value because they are cultural representations based upon fictional Western images of the Orient. You have to tell which statements from the following are wrong about Orientalism by Edward Said.
Okay. So here we are talking about a canonical text of post-colonial studies. That is Orientalism by Edward Said. So here in Orientalism, Edward Said talks about many things about the political positions of Orient and Occident, right? And how the West sees the East, right? So here, the first two options are correct. Orientalism by Edward Said. This work indeed establishes the term Orientalism as a critical concept to describe the West's commonly contemptuous depiction and the portrayal of the East, that is Orient. Correct. This work also proposes the idea that the notion of cultural representations is indeed a means of domination and control, right? But the third option is wrong. Here we have said that Said opined that Western writings about the Orient, the perceptions of the East present in Orientalism, can be taken at face value. It is wrong. He said that we cannot take these representations and writing at face value. We cannot take them at face value, right? So option C is wrong. It cannot be taken at face value because they're cultural representations based upon fictional Western images of the Orient. And that's why we cannot take them at face value. Here, the option C is wrong. Here, we have said we can take them at face value, but we cannot take them at face value. Option C is wrong. Okay. Next.
July's People is a 1981 novel by the South African writer Nadine Gordimer, and it is set in dash against the backdrop of apartheid or near future version of South Africa where apartheid is ended through a civil war, or is it against Mau Mau rebellion, or is it against emergency of Kenya? July's People. This is a novel by Nadine Gordimer.
So here the question is, what is the backdrop of this novel, July's People by Nadine Gordimer? Okay, so what is the backdrop? So July's People is a 1981 novel by Nadine Gordimer, and it is set in a near future version of South Africa where apartheid is ended through a civil war. That's the correct answer. Option B. So July's People, it's a 1981 novel by the South African writer Nadine Gordimer, and it is set in a near future version of South Africa where apartheid is ended through a civil war. Unlike Gordimer's earlier work, the novel was ignored by the apartheid government censor, though the book's South African publisher was later raided by the security police. So please be very careful about the settings of the works, the years, also the publishers at times, okay? So July's People, please be careful about the settings of these novels. It is set in a near future version of South Africa where apartheid is ended through a civil war. Okay, next.
Homeless in My Land, Translations from Modern Marathi Dalit Short Stories, is a collection of short stories edited by either of the following writers. Is it Baburao Bagul, Vasant Moon, Arjun Dangle, or Jerry Pinto?
Okay, so here we have a collection of Dalit short stories, okay? So what is the name? Homeless in My Land. Translations from modern Marathi Dalit short stories. That's the name of the collection of short stories. And this series, or not series, this collection has been edited by Arjun Dangle, the same person who edited, remember, Poisoned Bread, okay? So the short stories in this first English anthology. So please remember, it's the first English anthology of short stories from the Dalits. So these short stories in this first English anthology, these short stories forcefully convey the differentness of Dalit literature. The protagonists of these stories are shown struggling for survival at their different levels, confronting limitations, abject poverty, misery and brutality, and fighting a brave battle. Okay, so Homeless in My Land, it's a collection of modern Dalit short stories, and this collection has been edited by Arjun Dangle. Okay, next.
Coetzee was the first writer to twice be awarded the Booker Prize, first for Life and Times of Michael K. 1983 and for Disgrace 1999. Is this true or false?
Okay, so we often get statement questions in exams, right? So I thought of just inserting this type. So this statement is indeed true. J.M. Coetzee was the first writer to be awarded the Booker Prize twice. First for his work Life and Times of Michael K. and next for his work Disgrace. It is indeed true. Okay, next.
Ganesh Ram Sumer is a character in Dash. Is it the mystic Monsieur, the suffrage of Elvira, a house for Mr. Biswas, or Miguel Speed? Ganesh Ram Sumer, this is the character's name. You have to tell which novel is it in.
Okay. So here we have the name of the protagonist, and we have to identify this protagonist can be found in which work, right? So Ganesh Ramsumer is the protagonist in the novel The Mystic Monsieur by V.S. Naipaul. Okay, The Mystic Monsieur, it's a comic novel by V.S. Naipaul which was published in 1957. The setting of this work is Trinidad. Okay, and this novel is about Ganesh Ramsumer. He is a Trinidadian of Indian heritage, and as a young man, Ganesh attends a training college for teachers, and after graduation, he begins working as a primary school teacher in the port of Spain, Trinidad's capital. And this work then goes on to talk about his life journey and how he becomes a politician, right? So do look up the novels of V.S. Naipaul. They're very important. The characters, the chronology, because you may easily get a question like, arrange the following novels in the correct chronological order, right? So Ganesh Ramsumer is a character in The Mystic Monsieur by V.S. Naipaul. Okay. So that's all for tonight. And before we wrap up, I would just like to remind you all that we have already started the admissions for our 6-month online course for December NET 2024. And the classes will start from July 8. So you can enroll now easily. And there are also 2 phone numbers on the screen where you can contact if you have any questions. And then you can get enrolled for this course. Okay, so that's all for tonight. Ananya, shall we wrap up?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So keep studying and keep revising. We will see you again on Monday.